It's Thursday, March 25th, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. The Ministry of Health and Wellness is monitoring the substantial drop-off in the number of people getting tested for COVID-19. That's according to Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kenneth George, who said that the reluctance of Barbadians to come forward was one of the main reasons for the reduction in numbers. Between March 16th and 23rd, only 3,527 tests were conducted at the Best dos Santos laboratory, resulting in 124 positive cases. The figure pales in comparison to the number of tests that were carried out during the month of January.
So the testing has declined, we believe, for many reasons. People are more probably in the vaccine mode and in the testing mode. But the persons just are scared to get the positive result. But we need to test more. We have found that the levels of testing have been diminishing or decreasing. And that is why we did community-based testing and we continue to do community-based testing. Because only at a community-based level can we go into communities and do testing to encourage people to be tested. Because people are not coming forward in the numbers as before to be tested.
The COVID-19 monitoring unit has been called in to the National Insurance Scheme to assess apparent breaches of the country's workplace protocols and guide the government department on the way forward. The agreement came after a 3-hour-long meeting on Wednesday involving the top brass of the National Union of Public Workers and management of the NIS, less than 24 hours after scores of employees walked off the job. Our Kareem Smith has more.
Employees' main concerns include the existence of cramped workspaces, which in their opinion do not satisfy government's physical distancing requirements. The public officers were also annoyed at an apparent refusal from management to facilitate remote working arrangements, even after a staffer tested positive for the deadly virus. NEPW Acting General Secretary Richard Green revealed that after a visit to the Culloden Road St. Michael offices on Thursday, the unit would make recommendations to NIS Acting Director Jennifer Hunt on how staff should be placed and seated while in office. A procedure was also outlined for staff desirous of working remotely to submit applications for approval from management. In the meantime, workers returned to work. During Tuesday's walkout, workers also complained about a recommendation that would transition the NIS from a government department to a statutory board. According to Green, this was being treated as a separate issue by the union and was therefore not raised at Wednesday's meeting. Kareem Smith for Barbados Today.
Newly appointed chairman of the Government Industrial School, Dr. Lucille Beard, believes her experience with working in communities across the island and other factors make her a suitable candidate for the position. Critics have questioned her appointment, but she tells Barbados Today she is qualified and equipped with the relevant knowledge and skills. Dr. Beard, who is the CEO and senior pastor at Mount Zion's Missions in St. James, said her significant contribution to nation building should also speak to whether she is qualified to be chairman of the board.
My work in Barbados speaks for itself. My work in Gall Hill, Deacon Farm, Eden Lodge, New Orleans, Chapman Lane, in the prison, wherever, from one end of Barbados to the next, it speaks for itself and it tells you clearly if I qualify or not to sit on the board. My work speaks for itself, and it speaks loudly. And there isn't a parish or community in this country I even touch. And my work in Barbados is manifestly work that I qualify over and above to do anything that I'm called upon to do in terms of rehabilitation and reformation. I was one of the first appointed rehabilitation officers in government, in the prison.
Tourism should not be seen as an us versus them market. The caution from Tourism and International Transport Minister Senator Lisa Cummins as the island looks to restart the sector in the coming weeks. Speaking in the Senate yesterday on the Appropriation Bill 2021, Senator Cummins used her time to respond to criticism by many commentators on the island's decades-long dependency on tourism. She stressed, with the sector being one of the largest employers on the island, it cannot be ignored.
If I were to give a broad thematic umbrella under which my comments would be framed, I would struggle to find a single one, but if I had to narrow it down, it probably would be to say to us and to say to everyone that there is no us versus them. There can be no us versus them. And I'll elaborate on that during the course of my presentation. The tourism sector has historically been the largest driver of annual GDP for Barbados. It has been and continues to be the largest source of direct and indirect employment. Approximately 40% of our annual GDP is derived from the tourism sector, and we have approximately 35,000 humans, souls, Barbadians, people who live and work and breathe in the same communities that we do, who are employed in the tourism sector.
Senator Cummins revealed that the government had already started to outline several initiatives that would lead to a more robust tourism industry that can better handle future economic shocks.
The tourism industry is, if I were to put it in perhaps inflammatory terms, I would say globally tourism is in free fall. If I were to put it in aspirational terms, I would say that we have an opportunity to rebuild a sector that needed to be rebuilt from before. Because, Mr. President, in this incarnation, in this going down, it cannot be us versus them. It cannot be worker versus hotel owner. It cannot be labor versus capital. It cannot be visitor versus local. It cannot be arrivals, it cannot be domestic tourism versus international tourism. It cannot be international tourism versus regional tourism. It cannot be us versus them. We can call it all kinds of things. We can call it the visitor economy, as I know some of my colleagues in cabinet may call it. We can call it the tourism economy. We can call it any hospitality. We can call it any number of things. But ultimately, Mr. President, it speaks to a sense of national ownership of our assets, our heritage, our people, our being, and our very identity, and the willingness to share it with others. Whether they come from among us or from beyond us, it is a willingness to own who we are. That is effectively what this is about, Mr. President. And so on that basis, one of the very first priorities of this Ministry of Tourism is a greater emphasis on domestic tourism, getting Barbadians to feel that sense of ownership.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from our region now. Residents living in communities near the La Soufre volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have been told to heighten their preparedness in the event that it becomes necessary for them to evacuate at short notice. The National Emergency Management Organization issued the warning on Wednesday after scientists noted a change in seismic activity associated with the ongoing effusive eruption of the volcano. The alert level remains at orange, and no evacuation order or notice has yet been given, despite NEMO's call for residents in the red and orange volcanic hazard zone to increase their preparedness. On the international scene, U.S. President Joe Biden has put his vice president in charge of controlling migration at the southern border following an influx of new arrivals. On this Reuters TV report.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday put Vice President Kamala Harris in charge of efforts to stem the flow of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border that has led to a surge in unaccompanied children and an overcrowding of processing facilities. Harris said she'll work to address the root of the problem with leaders from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Many migrants say they make the journey to escape poverty, crime, and battered economies from natural disasters in Central America.
While we are clear that people should not come to the border now, we also understand that we will enforce the law, and that we also, because we can chew gum and walk at the same time, must address the root causes that cause people to make the trek.
Their remarks came moments before some U.S. journalists were allowed access Wednesday to a migrant facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas, as reporters pressed the White House for more transparency. Journalists have been repeatedly asking the White House to visit the migrant facilities for a first-hand look at living conditions, and they have not had access until Wednesday's tour. Video showed masked children playing soccer and basketball outside. What appeared to be a classroom had desks with notebooks and pencils. Housing facilities appeared to be temporary trailers. Senate Republicans blame a surge of migrants at the border on Biden's decision to reverse former President Donald Trump's policies to deport illegal immigrants.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.